beer, we use 4 ingredients. We use our malts, which are grains. Typically they started germination, stopped that, cracked so the seeds opened up. Also water. We try to mimic some water from certain areas and just have good water chemistry throughout. We also use different yeast strains in-house. The yeast is our workforce, a beautiful selection of hops. The first thing we're going to do is we'll pull that grain in. The specialty malts are usually in little bags, 50-pound bags. Our base malt, which makes up most of our malt bills, comes in 2,500-pound sacks. We're going to pull that up and mix it with hot water. We do what's called single infusion mashing, where we're just mixing the water and the grain together. But what it's actually going to have there is that hot water. It's going to activate the enzymes that's in the grain. The more sugar that remains in that solution that the yeast can't consume will carry through to the final product and make that beer sweeter and have a heavier body to it, a higher specific gravity. The amount of sugar that we extract, eventually we're going to push over into our actual brew kettle. We will dilute it down to a certain specific gravity to start with. The more sugars that you convert by the yeast, the higher the alcohol in that solution is going to be. Some beers you want sweeter, some you want drier. Just depends on what you're going for, what kind of style, which will affect the ratio of sugar. We're going to boil it. Typical boil is 90 minutes. We use different hop schedules for different parts. If they go in earlier, they're going to be broken down more. And a lot of the flavors and aromas will be released, but the alpha acids will remain and just give you sort of an astringent bitterness. The later they go in, the more you have to use, but the more flavor and or aroma is locked into them. From that point on, everything has to be completely sanitary. But after we boil it, we're going to go into what's called a whirlpool tank. The centrifugal force will take the solids, which is going to be proteins and the hop matter, and pull it to the center, and it's going to form a big cone. We don't want that to transfer through with what's called wort at that point, bittered wort. So we're going to suck from the outside and the cone's in the middle, and we can get most of that to remain in that whirlpool vessel. As it's coming out of the whirlpool, we're going to go through a heat exchanger and show that very hot wort. That would kill our yeast. After that heat exchanger, you'll still have heat to actually kind of pasteurize or sterilize the lines before then. However, we still keep them very clean and sanitary at all points. That's the very, very critical point. You have a solution that's idealistic for microorganisms to thrive, such as yeast, and you have a temperature in which they can survive and thrive in. So we'd go through a lot. We treat the tanks, clean them with a lot of chemical cycles, different kinds of chemicals rotate through, sanitize an excessive amount, but it's better to go too much than too little on that. So it'll be chilled down into the fermenter. It picks the yeast up. Yeast is the 4th ingredient now, so all the ingredients are together. The byproducts that it's producing during that process is CO2 and alcohol. That is the actual fermentation process. That's where the yeast started, with all the initial sugar, ate it all the way down as far as it's going to. After that, you'll go through some tests. It produces a lot of byproducts during that process. And if you give it time, it reabsorbs the chemical compounds that are making those off flavors. We'll be dropping yeast out. The dead yeast will settle to the bottom. Some beers get dry hopped, which is where we actually take hops and throw them into the fermenter. All you're getting from that is aroma, but a good nose makes or breaks a beer. We'll let it age on that. After the yeast has absorbed everything, it's had time on the dry hops, we'll start bringing the temperature down, coming out of fermentation temp, wherever we held it at. We're going to end up bringing it down to low 30s, 34-ish. Let it sit for a couple days, good weeks, pretty good on them. That causes the yeast to kind of become real dormant, and it all falls out of solution, along with a lot of the hot material and just anything else that might be in there. It all just falls to the bottom. We can drop out of a bottom port. When we actually go to move the beer out, we pull from a port above the cone. So we're not pulling that yeast solution out with it, we're just getting the actual beer at that point. We'll take that beer, we run it through lenticular filter right now. We'll go through it. It comes in with a little haze to it, comes out crystal clear. Push it into what's called a bright tank at that point. That's where we'll actually push carbonation into the solution. The next day it's ready to fill lots of kegs or cans with. And that's how we make beer.